Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. I am back for another guide video, which now talks about the PvE side of Guillotine Cross. In this video we are gonna dive in through every PvE GX build, setup and gameplay for every PvE contents of the game. Let's start off by seeing the Daggers build and setup. Here's my stats when on PvE preset. To shorten the video, I didn't record my Katar PvE stats anymore since it's just very similar to my Daggers PvE stats. This is how I allocate my stats points for my Daggers PvE setup. And this is how I allocate my skill points for my Daggers skill tree. Again, most of other guide shows the same setup, so I am showing mine just for the sake of a complete guide. I set up my cogwheels like this. Jagged Slash and Omni Chip is a must for Daggers build Varus Core. Jagged Slash gives you chance to throw additional red cut hit, while Omni Chip boosts both normal and skill DMG by 15% each normal and skill attacks hit. Meanwhile, you can have Bloodthirst and Crimson Harvest for additional DPS. Bloodthirst gives you extra 15% non-status damage when target HP is above 75%, while Crimson Harvest deals additional DPS for every 20 single target attacks you hit. You can also use cool combos like Corrosive Poison and Poison Boost. Corrosive Poison gives you 30% additional poison effectiveness against fire, earth, wind and water targets, and then Poison Boost gives additional physical attack multiplier when you use Enchant Poison. The enchants are pretty basic for PvE setup. You basically just want to get every damage increasing enchants you can get. For PvE, I prefer to have Pack Enchant instead of PvE Technic. It is always better to increase your raw stats first before your final damage multiplier PvE and PvP stats. For my weapon and accessories enchant, I use Melee Bone to further increase Dagger's skill damage. Dagger's skill damage does not crit, except for Vicious Tempest. You will also get the highest damage from the Poison Settlement, which does not crit. That is why it's Melee Boon over Superior Crit. Nebula is pretty simple too. You would just basically want everything that would increase your DPS further. In my case, I prioritize getting everything from red, yellow, green, blue and then purple effects. Since we're talking about Daggers build, the Astral sign you should use is Venom Sting in order to get every Daggers build effect increasing your damage further. This is how I set up my sigils for Daggers PvE build. I wasn't able to max out the level of my gold primal sigil yet. That is why I am still using the purple one to get the tier for effect. For the job sigil, we're using Guillotine Toxin. Meanwhile, if you haven't maxed out your Soul Mark sigil yet, you can use either Starfall 3 or Cosmic 1. Here is how I set up my feathers mainly for every PvE presets I have. You can use Dark Feather replacing Die Feather in case you don't have it, or if you have dismantled your Die Feathers already. That is no problem, Valor Feather for the Purple Feather. For your defense feathers setup, the best setup to have is with Light, Dark, Truth, Justice and Grace feathers. In my case I am using Nature since I have to dismantle my Grace for other feathers upgrade purpose. Using this setup will give you max damage increasing stats and is best to use on PvE modes such as Farming, MVP Hunt, Juperos and Tetra Realms. You just have to make sure your feathers are at least T20 before you use it. Meanwhile, using Nature Feather is better when you're going off to PvE modes such as Temple of Nightmare, Seaside Ruins, Ladder and Endless Tower. You can always use preset to save your setups and use them whenever you see fit. My mount equip setup is pretty simple too. For Daggers build I use Windbreaker on Dexterity Barding to gain more melee physical damage and physical attack. Stalwart for additional PV bonus and reduction, and then damage against large enemies on Protector Barding. As usual, I have ready presets for other monster sizes. Since I do not prioritize my PvE, I am only using one preset for both Katar and Daggers PvE build. For Daggers build, you will only need Toxin Mastery and Cross Impact Nexus talent. I'm using crit damage grid since I still mostly use Katar on PvE, however you can set up yours by using another preset with melee P damage grid in order to maximize your Daggers build DPS. My defensive grids are all still PvP related, but you can set up yours with PvE reduction to maximize your defense whenever you're doing PvE contents that require better defense. Meanwhile, on my support grids I use max SP to increase my skill DMG while using Master of Magic Armament set. For deck setup I am using Minor Ferocity, Minor Brutality and Major Brutality for higher stacking of Empower, which increases my P attack greatly. Meanwhile, if you're in a party of Mercy of Gefjon users and you're able to maintain 15 stacks of Empower, you can use Might of Emir to gain additional 40% P-Doc damage. You can also use Mercy of Gefjon if you have it, instead of using Minor Ferocity. Using Mercy of Gefjon will help you maintain high stack of Empower, while sharing for Empower stacks to your party members at the same time. Beside from the first decks mentioned, you can choose other decks that can increase your P attack, P damage and seal damage like these decks. For Soul Force, I use Flame Arbiter for my active skill with these crystals deployed. Chimera mainly reduces target's demi-human, brute reduction, it gives huge amount of P damage, and race bonus damage. GTB also gives high P damage bonus and skill damage. Blazer gives debuff of minus 25% DMG reduction to the target, while Jack increases size DMG by 18% to your demonic fire damage. You can also use Horon Crystal to extend your demonic fire duration, replacing your Jack Crystal. For the other slots, I basically put every damage increasing crystal. Say, for example, I put all my other fire crystals to my earth crystal slots, while I put all my other wind crystals to my water crystal slots. With this setup, I am able to use all my attack crystal stats, bonus increasing my damage output further. My Nightingale Echo PvE setup is just the same as with my PvP setup. I'm still using Cyclone for X to further increase my size damage bonus, giving a better damage output. To use Pillar for additional P damage and Ruin Coin damage. I use Gothic Ghost for my mount stat bonus. Anidex feature was just recently released. I wasn't able to utilize it further since I don't have much enema that I can use yet, nor I have unlocked the 5th slot to gain better set effect. Meanwhile, for PvE setup, you can use Gindol for additional all-size damage bonus, along with Misty, Slatter, and Evelyn. You can use Preset to set up your PvE and PvP Anidex. Moving on to my Katar PvE setup, I prioritize having 99 STR, 99 ANT, and 99 luck. 99 int, because int gives additional SP which will help me utilize more the effect of Master of Magic armament. Here's how I set up my skill tree. My Varus core for Katar PvE is very simple. It's similar to Dagger's core, but I no longer use Jagged Slash and Omni Chip. Instead, I get all other damage increasing cores I can have, such as Bloodthirst, Holy Light Shield, and Monolength Reversal. For the enchants, everything's pretty much the same with Dagger's enchant, only that I use Superior Crit for my weapon and accessories enchant, further increasing crit damage of my Katar skills. Nebula for my Katar PvE setup is just similar to my Daggers setup, only that for the Astral sign we're using Phantom Blade to gain additional Katar effects. Sigils are pretty much the same to with the Daggers build, only that we're going to use Shadow Phantom for the job sigil to match the build. The setup isn't any different as well with the Daggers build. For the mount equipment, I use Trample on Dexterity Barding for more crit damage, since all Katar third job skills deal crit damage. Everything else is just the same with the Daggers build, including the presets set for different sizes of monsters. Like I said earlier, I use only one preset from my Nexus engine for all of my PvE presets. Note that we're using max SP grids on our support grid mainly because we use Master of Magic armaments set on our Katar PvE build. Dex, Soul Force, Nightingale Echo, Mount, and Animus setup are all the same with the Daggers build. Moving on to the equipment setup for Daggers build. For the headwear, I mostly use Signal Ring on every PvE mods. I only use Golden Mech Hat when there's no genetic in my team when running Juperize. On facewear, I use Lacrima for more P attack and skill damage 12%. Sinforged if you got it from the previous egg balancing. For the mathwear, I use Maple Solitaire for additional skill and all-size damage. Party Whistle and Ruby Gem are both good alternative. Asher Melody for the backwear, since this is the only pure DPS backwear I got, providing extra 32% skill damage. For armament set, I use Tier set for higher P attack, but Charleston is a good option if you already have a high base P attack. Meanwhile, I use Daggers armament for both my right and left hand daggers. However, if you're using Poison Element, you can use Venom Sting to further increase your poison effectiveness. Eternal Sorrow if you do not have corrosive poison and still using Poison Element. For ornament set, I use Chaos for both necklace and ring. Silver Glory is good as well, but I find Chaos better for my build. I use Back to School for my costume since this is the best costume I have. Meanwhile, you can use Colors of Fall for F to P, Pop Superstar for low spenders, Mango Breeze, Violet Orchid, Duo Shade, and Paris Prophecy for high spenders to Wales. For the cards, I just basically use every DPS increasing cards, and then change weapon cards to counter the target's race and size. For the armor card, I still use Picky card, but there's a new purple card called Ancient Mimic which gives better Steamer and P damage. I will replace mine once I got this new card. Here are the other cards I use, feel free so see it. I use Stem Worm here to utilize red cut damage, adding up to my overall damage output. Edgar Puppet if you're hitting large targets, or Goblin Chief Puppet if you're hitting medium. Also, if you have Moonlight Puppet, you can use that if you're hitting small targets. Here's my skill wheel setup, both manual and auto. You can put Enchant Poison skill in your auto if you're using Poison element mainly to counter fire, earth, water, and wind elements. Again, our Katar PvE equipment setup is just pretty much similar to our Daggers PvE equipment setup. Please feel free to see the details for your information. For the weapon armament, we are using glaive rendered wound to gain tons of P attack and crit damage, shadow clothes for the shield, while we use Master of Magic for the armor armament. Since Katar heavily relies on skill attacks, Master of Magic is very effective on increasing Katar skill damage, further increasing our overall damage output. Meanwhile, we still use double chaos for our ornament set to further increase Katar skill damage. For the cards, everything's just almost the same. Only that sometimes I use Int and SP cards here to increase my max SP to maximize Master of Magic effect. Here's how I set up my skill wheel, both for manual and auto. Again, you can put enchant poison if you're mainly using poison element to counter for basic elements. Grind setup is just basically the same with the other two previous builds, only that this build is a bit modified to be quicker and faster for better grinding experience. Take note that Grimtooth is our main skill for grinding, so make sure to include it to your skill tree for grinding. It is a must to have Phantom Dance core to better utilize Grimtooth. With this skill, Grimtooth will put you to hiding automatically, making you use of the Grimtooth skill, which requires hiding to be used. The enchants are just the same as with the Katar PvE build. There's nothing much to change, other than you can use Rangabone since Rangabone works with Grimtooth. Nebula path is just the same with Katar PvE build. For sigils, I use Soul Mark, Swift Breakout, Silent Escape, and Rift Toxic. Soul Mark for additional damage, Rift Toxic to proc our damage once in a while, helping Grimtooth to cover wider radius of monsters when grinding. Swift Breakout and Silent Escape to gain additional MSPD, so that when grinding you can move faster to reach the mobs you're farming. This applies of course for MA as well. Job Sigil doesn't matter a lot here, but it's still better to use Shadow Phantom for increased P attack and P damage, especially if your target mobs is within range of rolling Katar. Feathers and mount equipment are just both the same with either of the two builds earlier. You can put anything on your Nexus engine for both attack and defensive greeds. However, I recommend using SP recovery for support greeds. This way you can recover SP without even lowering it to half, saving you lots of SP potion and Eden coins. For Dex, Soul Force, Nightingale Echo, Mount stats, and Animal are the same with the other two builds. Equipment setup is pretty much similar as well, all tough there are a few changes on weapon and armament and ornament set. For the cards, I use Garm Shrofa and Garm Baby for my weapon. Shrofa procs Thunderstorm, while Garm Baby procs Frost Diver, which helps clearing radius Grintooth can't reach. I also use Wind Ghost, which procs Jupiter Thunder, which also helps cover radius GT can't reach. Clock Tower Manager Fort Global CD, which helps quicken Grintooth cast time. For the weapon armament, we're using Grintooth Door mainly to add 2 meters on Grintooth range. Spring set for armament to have more SP and lower global CD. For necklace, Flame Spirit Orb to proc Roar of Red Flame, which again helps cover radius GT can't cover. And for the ring, Devourer of Souls to get additional 1 meter range for GT. Here I will show you how our setup works in action. Now you will see the proc skills appear here, and even not match these skills will surely help you have better grinding experience. Since we have Phantom Dance Veriscore, we were able to cast GT right away without manually casting Hiding Seal. And since we're using Devourer of Souls Ornament effect and Grintooth Dove, we get to have extra 3 meters range for our GT skill. Now if you try to check my SP, it's not dropping a lot since we're using SP recovery on our support grid. Here I will try to show you a gameplay that might improve your Jupero's damage, if not a lot, at least a bit higher than your usual damage. For the cards, you would just either going to use 1 damage to small size and 1 damage to plant or fish, or 2 damage to plant or 2 damage to fish. Moonlight Flower Puppet 1 card for your faceware if you have it. Blade Rendered Wound for weapon armament and Master of Magic for armor armament as still the armament sets we're going to use. And then double Chaos for the ornament set. We are also going to use Fire Element Converter because of the Illudoping skill of Genetic. Illudoping inflicts 50% additional fire damage taken, so make sure to have at least 1 Genetic in your team, because besides from Illudoping skill, Genetics can give you additional 10% damage to non-demi-human monsters from Gene Research Nexus talent while using their survival food skill. In this case, even with minus 25% damage while using fire to Jupero's boss, you're still dealing more damage due to the 50% additional fire damage taken from the Illudoping skill. Also, make sure when doing Jupero's, you hit on the boss back as Dark Floor skill damage increases when hitting at the back by 30%. Here I'll try to show you another way of increasing your DPS while hitting bosses, especially MVPS with Katar PvE build. In this case, when your Phantom Spree activates, you will not just inflict additional damage from getting higher skills multiplier, but you'll also inflict additional skill damage, not to mention get the minus 50% reduction from Dark Flow skill, which eventually will lead to a higher final damage output. Using Soul Force and Primal will further increase your damage output as well. Now finally for our last tool, Daggers build will be your best tool to deal higher DPS during MVP hunt, not because of rapid normal attacks, but due to high skill damage from procs, such as the Cross Impact proc, skill damage aligned from erosion, smog initial damage and damage over time, and finally from the poison settlement caused by the stacking of virulent poison. See the 1-5 for 361M? That damage comes from the poison settlement. And when you convert it to billion, that's 150 for billion in just 1 tick. This is the whole reason why we're using double dagger armament. With double dagger armament, we are basically getting to chances of crossing poison settlement, dealing around 150 B to 3 OB poison settlement damage in just a second or two. The video has been quite long now. I tried to include everything that players may ask of, but in case I forgot to add something, please let me know in the comments section below. I hope you'd like the video. If you do, please drop a like and subscribe. Until on my next video, thank you so much and have a good day.